If you watch a beginner play the net in doubles badminton, you'll immediately notice something about their posture.
Oh, absolutely. It's pretty glaring once you know what to look for.
Right. Their racket is almost always just like glued to the ceiling.
Yeah.
They're standing there like they're trying to catch lightning or
Wait,
something.
the Statue of Liberty.
Exactly. But if you watch a world champion, their racket is hovering quietly at their chest. Their elbows are tucked in this highly specific way, and they're standing way further back than you'd expect.
Which is completely counterintuitive to most people.
It really is. So today, we are taking a deep dive into the source material that decodes all of this. We're looking at the hidden biomechanics and the spatial geometry of what is arguably the most high-stakes microenvironment in racket sports.
The T-zone.
The T-zone. We are breaking down the front court in professional doubles. And I have to say, looking at these sources, this is not just casual backyard badminton.
No, not at all. It is a completely different universe from what most people understand the sport to be.
It's intense.
Very. We're looking at an environment where the difference between, absolute domination and total collapse is measured in millimeters and milliseconds.
Literally fractions of a second.
Right. The sources we're analyzing today, they treat the front court not as a place you just happen to stand, but as a meticulously calculated matrix. It's all human anatomy and physics.
When I was poring over these materials, the only comparisons that kept coming to mind were like a goalie in professional hockey facing down a slap shot, or maybe a martial artist in extreme close quarters combat.
That's a really good way to visualize it.
Because the front court player is just living in a world of pure reaction. You are operating on instinct, but as the sources point out, that instinct has to be pre-programmed.
Yeah, pre-programmed through a really profound understanding of spatial awareness. That martial arts analogy aligns perfectly with the core premise we need to establish right out of the gate here.
Which is what exactly?
That the front court is not a static location. It's not an X marks the spot where you just plant your feet and wait for the shuttle to come to you.
Right, you're not just a wall.
Exactly. The texts define it as a dynamic high-pressure zone, and it revolves entirely around the T intersection.
That's the exact point where the center line meets the front service line, right?
That's the one. Operating in this zone isn't just about raw athletic reflex. It's about synthesizing geometry, anticipating trajectories, and, honestly, manipulating your own skeletal structure to buy yourself fractions of a second.
Buy yourself time. Wow. Okay, so let's build this from the ground up, starting with the geometry of where you actually put your feet.
The foundation.
Because the sources tackle a massive misconception right away. It's this myth that getting closer to the net gives you a better chance to attack.
Yeah, that's the first thing beginners get wrong.
They outline what they call a longitudinal sweet spot. So placing the ideal defensive and offensive position roughly 0.5 to 1 meter behind the front service line.
Right.
Now, I have to push back on this a little bit just as a layman, because my instinct tells me that if my primary job is to intercept the shuttle and block off the net, I should be practically hugging the tape.
Sure, it seems logical.
If I want to cut off the ankle, isn't closer always faster? I mean, I want to be right there.
That instinct makes perfect sense geometrically, but it completely ignores human biology.
Oh, really? How so?
To understand why hugging the net is a trap, you have to look at the physics of reaction time combined with the trajectory of an opponent's shot.
Okay, walk me through that.
Imagine you are standing with your toes touching the net, or even just right on the service line. If your opponent hits a fast, flat drive aimed dead center at your body, you have mathematically eliminated your own biological reaction window.
Because the shuttle is traveling too fast for my brain to even process the visual.
Exactly. The shuttlecock is leaving their racket face at incredible speed. We're talking hundreds of kilometers an hour in professional play.
That's terrifying.
It is. So by the time your optic nerve processes that visual information, sends the signal to your motor cortex, and your nervous system tells your arm muscles to raise the racket.
It's too late.
The shuttle has already hit you. You've smothered your own defense. You literally have zero physical space to lift your racket into the strike zone.
Wow. You've just taken away your own operating room. You're physically jammed.
You're completely jammed. And furthermore, there's a secondary, equally fatal flaw to standing that close.
Oh, just.
You've made yourself incredibly vulnerable to the push. If you are that far forward, your opponent doesn't even need to hit a fast drive through you. They can just gently flick the shuttle right over your head.
Oh, right. Because my momentum is all wrong.
Exactly. Because you are crowding the net, your center of gravity is naturally leaning forward. Trying to abruptly shift your mass backward to intercept a shuttle pushed over your head is biomechanically slow.
And incredibly awkward, I imagine.
Very. You are instantly taken out of the play.
And when you get taken out of the play, your poor partner in the rear court is suddenly left scrambling,
Right, they have to cover the entire back 2/3 of the court by themselves.
which destroys the whole structure of a doubles team.
Yeah.
I mean, you've totally hung them out to dry.
Exactly. But the sources also warn heavily against the opposite extreme, what they call the too far trap.
Right, right. They note that moving beyond 1.5 meters behind the service line turns you into a midfielder.
Stepping back into that 1.5-meter plus territory is essentially entering no man's land. You are doing two highly destructive things to your team's formation.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, you are crowding your rear court partner's operational space. Doubles relies on a strict, almost invisible division of labor.
Like an unspoken agreement of who owns what space.
Precisely. The rear player needs massive amounts of room to launch jumping smashes, to rotate, and to navigate the deep corners. If you drift back, you become a physical obstacle.
You're just in the way.
You are clogging up the runway they need to execute their offense.
And I imagine you're also taking yourself out of the game for the shots you're actually supposed to be hitting, right? Like the delicate ones at the net.
Yes, you completely neutralize your own primary weapon. If the opponent plays a tight, spinning net shot, one of those shots that tumbles erratically and barely crosses the tape.
Yeah, the really annoying ones.
Right. If they hit one of those and you are 1.5 meters back, you simply cannot reach it in time. By the time you lunge forward, the shuttle has dropped below the top of the net.
Which means you can't hit it down anymore.
Exactly. You lose the ability to kill the shot downward. You are forced to scrape it off the floor and lift it upward.
And a lift just surrenders the attack.
Completely. It gives the opponent an easy smash.
So that 0.5 to 1 meter zone behind the service line is like this precise mathematical compromise.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
It gives you the necessary optic reaction time to defend against fast body drives while keeping your physical footprint close enough to pounce on a tight net shot.
You get the best of both worlds, physically speaking.
But that just covers the longitudinal axis, front to back. The geometry gets significantly more complex when we examine the lateral axis left to right.
Oh, absolutely. This is where it gets really chess-like.
The golden rule in the text for lateral positioning is to follow the shuttle, seal the straight line. Can we walk through the spatial logic of tracking the shuttle laterally?
Sure. This requires visualizing the court and understanding spatial probability. Let's say your partner is in the rear court, positioned deep on the right side.
Okay, I'm picturing it. They're on the right.
And they are winding up for a massive smash. The golden rule dictates that you, standing at the front, must step slightly to the right as well. You position yourself slightly to the right of the center line.
Okay, see, that feels entirely counterintuitive to anyone who has played team sports.
I know, it really does.
Because if my partner is heavily loading the right side of the court, my brain screams that I need to cover the massive open void on the left side to balance the formation.
Right. If you were covering a static piece of real estate like in soccer or basketball zones, balancing the court would make sense.
But we aren't doing that here.
No. You're covering dynamic high-speed trajectories. You follow the shuttle to the right because the straight line return from your opponent is the shortest and therefore the fastest possible trajectory back over the net.
Wait, let me make sure I'm getting this. Because the straight line is the shortest physical distance, the shuttle is going to get to me faster if they hit it straight.
Exactly. If your partner smashes from the right and the opponent manages to block it straight back down that right sideline, that shuttle is crossing the net in a fraction of a second.
So you are basically plugging the most immediate high-velocity leak in the defense.
You are guarding against the most immediate threat. By shifting your mass to the right, you physically place your body and your racket directly in the path of that straight bullet.
Okay, but what about the open court on the left? What if they hit it there?
Consider the alternative return, the cross-court block. If the opponent digs out that smash and blocks it diagonally across the net to the empty left side, that shuttle has to travel a significantly longer physical distance through the air.
Oh, because the hypotenuse of the triangle is longer.
Precisely. And because the distance is longer, the flight time is longer.
And that extra air time is exactly what the rear court partner needs.
Right. That extra fraction of a second gives your rear court partner the time to recover from their smash, move diagonally, and cover the open court.
Wow. So you absorb the fast, straight drive. and you leave the slower hanging cross-court floater for your partner to clean up.
Exactly. You are manipulating the geometry of the court to maximize the collective reaction time of the team.
That is brilliant. But, positioning isn't just about static geometry. The sources emphasize how the T-zone constantly breathes with the flow of the rally.
It's very fluid. Court pressure is entirely dynamic.
Right, so rather than just standing in one spot, your depth fluctuates based on the narrative of the point. For example, the text discusses the scenario right after you hit your own short serve.
A very critical moment in the rally.
So the shuttle is barely skimming over the net tape, and the receiver is rushing forward. The material says you should instantly take a half step forward so your toes are almost on the service line. It's an incredibly aggressive shift.
It's psychological warfare manifesting as physical positioning.
Really? Psychological?
Absolutely. When you serve short, the opponent is lunging forward, trying to aggressively push or brush the shuttle before it drops. By immediately taking that half step forward, you maximize your physical footprint in their field of vision.
So you're basically looming over them, creating this massive visual obstruction.
You are visually declaring that if they attempt to play a tight, risky shot at the net, you are already occupying that space, and you will instantly kill it.
That's terrifying from the receiver's perspective.
That's the point. This intense visual pressure frequently induces a micro-hesitation in the receiver. To avoid the threat of your presence, their brain defaults to the safe biological option.
Which is to just lift the shuttle.
Exactly. They hit the shuttle high into the back of the court.
And the moment they lift the shuttle, they've surrendered the attack. Your positioning alone dictated their shot selection.
You've won the tactical battle before the rally even really starts.
Now let's contrast that intense forward pressure with what happens when your team is on an all-out offensive. Your partner is in the backcourt hitting a barrage of heavy smashes.
Right, full attack mode.
The text says you actually do the opposite here. You retreat slightly, settling around 1 meter behind the line. Doesn't stepping back give up control of the net?
Not in this context, no, because you have to analyze the opponent's capability under extreme duress.
Okay, make sense of that for me.
When your partner is raining down relentless heavy smashes, the defenders are in survival mode. They are not going to be executing precise, tight, spinning net shots that require delicate touch.
Right, they're just trying to survive the point.
Exactly. They are just throwing their rackets out, hoping to get any piece of the cork to block it back over the net. Those desperate, panicked blocks rarely have the quality to drop tight to the net.
They usually pop up.
Yes, they usually pop up as weak half-court drives or mid-court floaters.
Ah, and if you were hugging the net closely during a barrage of smashes, those mid-court floaters would sail right over your head.
Precisely. By stepping back to that 1 meter mark, you've widened your interception radius. You are hunting for the loose ball.
So you're adjusting your net to catch the specific type of fish they're forced to throw at you.
That's a great analogy. You're giving yourself the physical space and the reaction time to intercept those half-court pushes before they ever reach your partner. It allows you to maintain a suffocating cycle of pressure.
Man, the chess match here is just wild. Then there is the complete opposite dynamic. The tumbling net shot. You're at the front, you execute a perfect spinning net wipe.
One of the hardest shots to defend against.
So the shuttle is tumbling erratically and dropping tightly below the tape on the opponent's side. The sources dictate that the instant you hit that shot, you step forward and guard the net with absolute intensity.
You are closing the trap.
Closing the trap. I love that.
The opponent has to lunge forward from a compromised deep position to reach your spinning shot. Because the shuttle has already dropped below the level of the net, they physically cannot hit it downward.
Right, the net's literally in the way.
The rules of physics and the geometry of the net dictate they must hit it upward to get it over the cord.
So you have like 100% certainty about the general trajectory of their next shot.
Because you know the upward trajectory is inevitable, you instantly shift your mass forward to choke out the airspace. You crowd the net to pounce on whatever upward lift they create.
So you're essentially turning your own high-quality setup shot into a guaranteed kill opportunity.
Exactly, just by taking away the very space they need to recover.
Okay, so we've mapped out the precise geometry of the feet. We understand the longitudinal physics, the lateral shifting to cover the straight line, and how court pressure dictates your depth.
That's the baseline.
But your feet are only the foundation. Moving vertically up the body, we arrive at the altitude of the racket. And this is where we have to completely dismantle that beginner's instincts we talked about earlier.
The instinct to hold the racket as high as physically possible.
Right. The sources call this the altitude trap, proving why highest is actually a massive physiological flaw. Let's break down the anatomy of why holding your racket up like the Statue of Liberty is a disaster.
It is the most common structural error, and it stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of what the front court player is actually doing.
Which is what?
You aren't reaching for the sky, you are building a wall to intercept high-speed horizontal projectiles. The first fatal flaw, the overhead racket posture, is what the sources identify as the chest and abdomen blind spot.
Chest and abdomen blind spot. Okay, explain that.
This is purely a matter of anatomical leverage. In doubles, when opponents are defending against your team's attack, their primary counterweapon is the flat drive.
These are those shots hit incredibly hard, traveling parallel to the floor, skimming just above the net tape.
Right, so the shuttle is coming at you like a laser, perfectly horizontal to the ground, right around sternum level.
Okay.
Now, visualize your racket held high above your head. To intercept that chest-height laser, your arm has to travel on a downward collapsing trajectory.
Oh, I see.
Moving your racket from above your head down to your own sternum forces your arm into an incredibly weak, biologically compromised position. Your elbow has nowhere to travel.
So it usually gets tucked violently into your own ribs, or your wrist is forced to fold backward into a vulnerable angle.
Exactly.
Wait, I struggle with this concept a bit, to be honest. If my racket is at my chest, aren't I leaving my face completely exposed? Like, a fast drive to the nose seems significantly worse than a drive to the ribs. How does lowering the racket protect my head?
It's a vital question and a very common fear. The difference lies in mobility.
Mobility of the head.
Yes. Your head and neck are highly mobile. You can instinctively duck or sway your head out of the path of a high drive much faster than you can move your entire torso.
Oh, that makes sense. The torso is just this massive block.
Right. Furthermore, snapping a racket upward from the chest to protect the face is a natural, fast, muscle-contracting movement that generates immense leverage.
Like throwing an uppercut.
Exactly. But bringing a racket downward from above the head to protect the massive static target of your torso is clunky. It's anatomically restrictive, and it generates zero power.
Because you're just folding in on yourself.
Right. If you try to block a hard drive with a downward collapsing arm, the sheer velocity of the shuttle will overpower your weakened wrist, and you'll dump the shot into the net.
So you're creating a massive structural vulnerability right in the center of your mass.
Completely.
But the second flaw of the high racket has nothing to do with your arms, right? It's about your eyes.
Yes. The text points out that holding the racket high creates a severe visual obstruction.
Consider the physical dimensions of the racket head. If you hold your arm up so the frame is resting in front of your forehead or slightly above it, you have essentially placed a grid of synthetic strings and a solid frame directly across your primary field of vision.
And we've established that the T-zone is a game of milliseconds. Your eyes require absolute, unobstructed clarity.
You literally can't afford to blink.
You must be able to read the exact micro-angle of the opponent's racket face at the moment of impact, and you need to track the rotation of the cork on the shuttle.
Wait, they're tracking the actual rotation of the cork.
Elite players are, yes. So if your own equipment is blurring your sightline, you are flying blind when visual data is most critical.
Losing sight of the shuttle for even a tenth of a second means your brain misjudges the trajectory.
And at the net, a misjudged trajectory means a lost point. Your equipment cannot become a visual barrier.
Wow. Which brings us to the third fatal flaw, which is purely about muscular endurance. The text discusses early muscular fatigue and highlights the isometric contraction of the deltoids and trapezius muscles. What is actually happening to the muscle fibers when a player holds that high posture rally after rally?
Isometric contraction occurs when your muscles are firing and generating tension, but the muscle length isn't changing. Think of pushing against a locked door or holding a heavy object statically in the air.
But a badminton racket is super light. It only weighs, what, about 85 grams?
True, it's very light. But holding your arm extended overhead for prolonged periods requires continuous, unbroken isometric engagement of the deltoid muscles in your shoulders and the trapezius muscles connecting to your neck.
It's like holding a coffee cup straight out in front of you. The cup is light, but after 3 minutes, your arm starts shaking.
Perfect analogy. The human shoulder joint is simply not engineered for prolonged static overhead holding. If you maintain that posture through multiple high-intensity rallies, Your shoulder muscles will rapidly fill with lactic acid.
And lactic acid makes them heavy, stiff, and slow to react.
Exactly. The ultimate irony here is that by fatiguing your shoulders while standing at the net, you completely obliterate your ability to execute a powerful, explosive jump smash when you eventually rotate to the rear court.
Oh, wow. You are sapping your own offensive artillery just by adopting the wrong waiting stance.
You're defeating yourself before the rally even ends.
So the high racket destroys your chest defense, clouds your vision, and drains your stamina.
It's a triple threat of bad technique.
The solution provided by the sources is what they call the golden height. The absolute rule is stated clearly. Hand at the chest, racket at the eye. Let's get incredibly specific about these spatial coordinates.
The coordinates dictate your structural readiness. When the text says hand at the chest, it is referring to the grip. Your wrist and the bones of your hand should be resting comfortably in the vertical space between your lower sternum and your collarbone.
Okay, so you are not dropping your hand to your waist.
No, absolutely not. But
Yeah.
you are absolutely not elevating it above your shoulders either.
And what about the frame of the racket?
Because your hand is at the chest, the shaft of the racket naturally extends diagonally upward and forward, which places the sweet spot, the very center of the string bed, exactly at eye or forehead level.
So hand low, frame high.
Right. This golden height resolves every single issue we just discussed. First, the racket is perfectly positioned to handle those dangerous drives to the sternum with a simple, powerful forward push.
Because your arm is already loaded behind it.
Exactly. Second, because the frame is angled slightly away and the hand is lower, your line of sight over the top of the net tape is completely unobstructed.
You can actually see what you're doing.
And third, resting the hand at chest height allows the heavy lifting muscles of the shoulder and neck to remain relaxed and oxygenated. You aren't fighting gravity.
It is the ultimate baseline posture. But just as your footwork breathes with the rally, the altitude of your racket must adapt dynamically, right?
Yes, the golden height is your neutral state.
So during a neutral exchange, you maintain the golden height. But the sources outline immediate exceptions. What happens when the opponent shanks a shot and it pops up high above the net?
That is the singular scenario where the overhead posture is required.
Ah,
If you see the shuttle pop up weakly above the net tape, you instantly abandon the golden height and lock your arms straight up overhead. You transition from a state of structural readiness to a state of lethal execution.
because you want to intercept that floating shuttle at the highest possible point in its arc to drive it steeply downward.
Exactly. But the instant the kill is executed, or if the opponent recovers and the opportunity vanishes, you immediately drop your arm back down to the golden height.
It's just a temporary strike mode. And on the flip side, what about total defense? What if your partner hits a weak, short lift and the opponent in the back court is winding up for a massive jump smash?
In a siege scenario, the golden height is actually too high.
Really? Even at the chest?
Yes.
Hmm.
A jump smash travels on a violent, steep downward trajectory toward the floor. If your racket is sitting at eye level, a 350-kilometer-per-hour smash will blow past your shins before you can drop your arm.
Because the shuttle is literally outracing gravity and your reaction time.
Right. The instant you recognize your team is vulnerable to a smash, you must drop the racket head down to your waist or lower chest level. You broaden your stance, drop your center of gravity, and prepare to dig the shuttle out from near your ankles.
It's a fluid calibration. Hand at chest for neutral pressure, snap high for the kill, drop low for the siege.
Beautifully summarized.
So, we've placed the feet and we've sent the racket height. But the orientation of your arms, specifically your elbows, dictates whether you can actually deploy that racket effectively.
This is a huge piece of the puzzle.
The sources introduce a fascinating biomechanical dichotomy here. The shield versus the wings. The core directive is strict. Elbows must be pushed forward, never flared out sideways.
Never.
The analogy that comes to mind when I flare my elbows out is a bird flapping its wings. But what is the anatomical purpose of pushing them forward? What are we trying to mimic?
Pushing the elbows forward creates a biomechanical shield, and it is perhaps the most misunderstood element of net play. To understand why spreading your elbows like wings is so detrimental, we need to examine what the sources call the jamming effect.
The jamming effect. Let's unpack that.
The absolute non-negotiable rule of striking the shuttle at the net is that the point of contact must occur 20 to 30 centimeters in front of your body's vertical plane.
So you have to meet the shuttle out in front before it crosses into your personal space.
Exactly. When you push your elbows slightly forward, away from your ribs, you are naturally extending your forearms, your wrists, and the racket head directly into that 20 to 30 centimeter strike zone.
Your skeletal structure is effortlessly supporting the racket exactly where it needs to be to intercept the shuttle early.
Right. It's just hanging there, ready.
But when I flare my elbows out laterally to the sides,
When you flare your elbows laterally, you inadvertently pull your forearms and wrists backward, bringing them parallel to the axis of your chest. You have physically withdrawn your racket from the forward strike zone.
oh wow, you've retreated before the shot even comes.
Yes. Now, if the opponent fires a fast drive, your racket isn't waiting out in front to absorb it. The shuttle crosses into your physical space, and you are forced to try and hit it when it is already aligned with your torso, or even slightly behind you.
Which means your swing is inherently late.
Always late. You have to awkwardly contort your wrist or collapse your shoulder inward just to make contact. Your swing loses all leverage and precision because you are hitting the shuttle beside you rather than pushing into it from behind.
You've jammed your own kinetic chain.
Exactly. You've jammed yourself. But the secondary issue with flared elbows is even more dangerous, and it relates directly to defending what the texts call the body shot buffer.
The body shot buffer. I love the terminology in these sources.
Opponents at this level are highly analytical. If they see you guarding the net, they know the most difficult place for you to defend is your own center of mass.
So they will actively aim their drives right your right shoulder or dead center of your sternum.
Yes, it's the ultimate aggressive tactic. You aren't aiming for the open court. You're aiming to handcuff the physical body of the player.
Which is brutal, honestly. But if your elbows are pushed forward, you've naturally engineered an anatomical defense mechanism against this tactic, right?
You have. That forward space acts as a physical buffer. Your pushed forward elbow becomes a stable pivot point. With the elbow forward, your forearm can act exactly like a windshield wiper on a car.
A windshield wiper. Okay, picture that.
If the drive is aimed at your right shoulder, the forearm easily windshield wipers outward to execute a forehand block. If the drive is aimed at your sternum or left shoulder, the forearm effortlessly windshield wipers inward across your body to execute a backhand block.
So because the elbow is anchored forward, the forearm has the necessary clearance and the folding room to pivot smoothly across the entire width of your torso.
Exactly.
The windshield wiper is a perfect visualization. The pivot point is out in front, so the blade can sweep across the entire glass. But if my elbows are flared out to the sides...
If your elbows are flared out, you have no windshield wiper. Your chest is utterly exposed. If a shot is driven hard at your sternum, your arm has no physical space to fold inward because your elbow is already pulled back on the lateral plane.
You literally cannot bring the racket head to the center of your chest fast enough.
The shuttle will strike your body before you can bring the racket across. You have eliminated your body's natural folding room.
Which brings up the physical reality of the muscles themselves. The sources argue that spread elbows actually trigger the wrong muscular system. What is happening underneath the skin when you flare your elbows versus pushing them forward?
This is where we uncover the hidden fatigue factors that silently drain players over the course of a match. If you lift your arms and flare your elbows out horizontally right now, you will instantly feel a specific set of muscles engage.
Okay, I'm doing it.
You are activating the levator scapulae, which are essentially the muscles in your neck you use to shrug your shoulders when you say, I don't know, along with your upper trapezius.
Oh man, yeah, I feel that immediately. It feels tense, like I'm pulling my shoulders up toward my ears. It feels like a stress posture.
It is a stress posture, and that shrugging tension is a physiological disaster for an athlete. You are activating muscles designed to lift the shoulders vertically rather than muscles designed to stabilize and push horizontally.
Then I imagine that restricts blood flow.
It restricts blood flow, accelerates fatigue, and makes your entire upper body feel stiff and unresponsive.
Okay, now drop your shoulders and simply push your elbows slightly forward, keeping them closer together.
Do you feel the difference?
Yeah, the tension in the neck completely vanishes, like instantly.
By pushing the elbows forward, you shift the structural load away from the neck and transfer it onto the pectoralis major, your main chest muscles, and the serratus anterior, which are the muscles that wrap around your ribs.
So you're recruiting the big guns.
Exactly. These muscle groups are evolutionarily designed for forward stabilization and pushing. In this forward elbow posture, your shoulders stay dropped and relaxed, yet your arms are incredibly stable and primed to explode forward with speed.
You've swapped out exhausting, tense muscles for stable, highly efficient ones.
It's an anatomical hack.
The text provides 3 fantastic visualizations to lock in this posture. The first is holding a race car steering wheel. Your hands are at the 10 and 2 positions, elbows are bent and pointing somewhat forward, shoulders are relaxed.
That's a great one.
The second visualization is hugging a giant watermelon or a massive beach ball against your chest. If you try to hold a giant sphere, your elbows naturally have to curve forward around its mass. You can't hold a beach ball with your elbows sticking straight out horizontally. It would slip through your arms.
Right, that forward curving embrace is exactly the structural integrity you want.
And the third is holding a heavy buckler shield slightly in front of your chest to absorb a physical impact. You'd naturally brace it with your elbows forward to provide structural support against the incoming force.
All three of those are perfect mental models for the T-zone player.
So we have the precise foot placement, the golden height of the racket, and the forward shield mechanics of the elbows.
We're fully built.
But here is the ultimate practical dilemma. If you are maintaining this perfect forward-focused posture, keeping your eyes up, tracking the shuttle and the opponent, how do you actually know you were in the right spot on the court?
Right, because you can't look down.
Exactly. You cannot look down at your feet. The moment you look down to check your positioning, you lose visual contact with the shuttle, and you lose the point.
This dilemma brings us to the concept of the projection hack. And in analyzing these sources, this stands out as the most brilliant, high-level tactical insight in the entire document.
I couldn't agree more.
It is a masterclass in utilizing human peripheral vision to maintain spatial dominance.
I have to say, this concept fundamentally changes how you view the court. It removes the mental load entirely. You aren't processing math or guessing distances in the middle of a frantic rally. You're just looking at a shadow.
A literal visual cue.
The text describes a vertical projection geometry. It states that when you are standing precisely 0.5 meters behind the service line, leaning forward slightly with your elbows pushed out and your racket at the golden height, the downward vertical projection, essentially the visual shadow of your racket head, perfectly overlaps the painted front service line.
It creates a biological heads-up display, a HUD, integrated seamlessly into your natural field of vision, like in a video game.
Yes. Let's examine why this is so profoundly effective. As a front court player, your primary visual focus is directed forward and slightly downward, tracking the top of the net tape and the movement of the opponent's racket.
But within your lower peripheral vision, you can always perceive the blurry, out-of-focus outline of your own racket frame hovering in space.
It's always there, anchoring the bottom of your vision.
And you can also perceive the stark white line of the front service line painted against the green or blue court floor.
So you just line them up.
Exactly. By consciously aligning your physical posture so that the blurry image of your racket frame appears to hover directly over or perfectly overlap that white service line, you have engineered a passive visual confirmation system.
Without ever looking down at your feet, you know instantly and instinctively that your distance from the net is mathematically optimal.
If your peripheral vision sees the racket's shadow falling short of the line, closer to your body, you know you've subconsciously drifted backward and are yielding crucial space.
And if you see the shadow extending far past the line toward the net, you know you are crowding the zone and exposing yourself to the lob.
The visual overlap anchors you in the matrix.
It's an automatic real-time calibration tool. It's so cool. But there's a second massive benefit to this projection hack, and it involves navigating the actual rules of the sport. The text details the 1.98-meter safety buffer. Walk us through the mathematics of this rule.
One of the cardinal strictest rules of badminton is the over-the-net fault. You are legally forbidden from striking the shuttlecock when it is still on the opponent's side of the net.
Right. Your racket head cannot cross the vertical invisible plane of the net to make contact.
Committing this fault instantly loses you the point. Now, the physical layout of a badminton court dictates that the front service line is painted exactly 1.98 meters from the net itself. That is nearly 2 full meters of space.
Which is a significant amount of distance when you're lunging.
Precisely. Therefore, if your racket is physically projecting downward directly onto the service line, that means the furthest physical extent of your racket is mathematically locked at 1.98 meters away from the net plane.
So even if you explode forward during the swing, you have a massive runway.
You are guaranteed an enormous margin of error. You are maximizing your offensive psychological pressure. You're leaning in, racket up, looking incredibly aggressive. But the geometry of your projection guarantees that even if you take a massive lunge forward during the execution of your swing, it is virtually impossible for your racket to accidentally cross the plane of the net and commit a fault.
You have mathematically engineered a posture where you can be as violently aggressive as possible without ever risking a rules violation.
It frees you up to just unleash your speed without hesitation.
And think about how that projection shifts when the rally dynamics change. Earlier, we discussed stepping back to the 1 meter mark when your partner is under siege and smashing from the back. How does the player utilize the projection hack when they've intentionally retreated?
The HUD remains active, it simply recalibrates its meaning. If you back up to stand 1 full meter behind the line while maintaining that same forward-leaning, elbows-out structural shield, the downward projection of your racket head now falls roughly 0.5 meters behind the service line.
So it's hovering in the empty green space between your body and the white line.
Yes.
And what does that specific visual input tell the player's brain?
That visual confirms that you are perfectly positioned to guard what the sources define as the golden funnel. You've created the exact necessary physical cushion to absorb those tighter body pushes or aggressive flat drives we talked about earlier, while still maintaining enough forward structural pressure to intercept loose mid-court floaters.
You are utilizing the projection not as a rigid static rule, but as a dynamic sliding scale to visually confirm your tactical depth on the court in real time.
It's an incredibly high-level way to process spatial data without using your conscious brain.
This is a phenomenal foundation. We've built the ultimate defensive and offensive framework. The feet are set, the posture is anatomically perfect, the HUD is active, and the biological shield is up.
Everything is primed.
Now the moment arrives. The opponent cracks under the pressure, they hit a weak shot, and the shuttle is floating over the net. It is time to pull the trigger.
Payoff.
How do you actually execute the strike without destroying all the structural work you just did? This brings us to the micromechanics of the strike, specifically the crucial difference between kills and wipes.
The mechanics here are so subtle, but so important.
The philosophy of movement detailed here is incredibly stark. The text states, big movements get you killed, medium movements get you killed, only micro movements win the point. Why are big swings so detrimental when you have a clear shot at the net?
It all routes back to the unforgiving nature of time and space in the T-zone. If you are standing at the net and you see a loose shuttle pop up, the overwhelming human instinct, especially if you grew up playing casually in the backyard, is to wind up your arm, pull your shoulder back, and take a massive, glorious swing to smash the shuttle into the floor.
Yeah, you want the highlight reel shot.
Of course. But a big movement, initiating a swing from the shoulder joint, consumes too much time. By the time your arm arcs backward and then begins to travel forward, the shuttle has already dropped below the level of the net tape, or the opponent has easily read your highly telegraphed windup and moved into position to defend it.
You've broadcasted your intention to the entire arena, and a huge swing drastically increases the kinetic chaos. I imagine the chance of crashing your racket into the net skyrockets.
Absolutely. If you swing your entire arm with full force, the forward momentum is nearly impossible to break abruptly. You will almost certainly crash your racket frame into the net mesh.
Which, as we discussed, is an immediate fault, meaning you lose the point regardless of where the shuttle lands.
Exactly. That is why big and medium movements get you killed. The only viable biomechanical path is the micro movement.
The sources break this down into a highly specific sequence chain. Dynamic radar adjustment, followed by locking the framework, ending with explosive finger and wrist action. Let's examine the net kill, or what the text refers to as the snap. This is specifically deployed when the shuttle is distinctly hovering above the net tape.
Right, when you have clear downward access.
The mechanical setup for the kill actually begins with a grip, which I found fascinating. The text specifies that you need a hollow palm and incredibly loose fingers initially. I would have assumed you'd want a vice-like death grip on the racket handle to deliver a kill shot.
A death grip is actually the biological enemy of fast twitch speed.
Really? Why?
If your hand is tightly clenched around the grip before the stroke even begins, the muscles and tendons in your forearm are already fully contracted. A muscle that is already fully contracted cannot contract further to generate sudden, explosive acceleration.
Oh, because it's already maxed out.
Exactly. You have exhausted your potential energy just holding the racket.
You're tense before the action even starts.
Yeah, precisely. That is why the required starting position is a hollow palm. You are holding the racket loosely, cradling it primarily with your fingers, creating a small, literal pocket of empty space between the rigid handle of the racket and the fleshy palm of your hand.
Like holding a baby bird.
Yes. Your muscles are structurally relaxed but neurologically primed. Then comes the critical moment, the exact fraction of a second prior to impact. At that microsecond, the hand instantly and violently squeezes the grip tight, collapsing that hollow space in the palm.
The snap.
The snap. And the sources get incredibly granular about the anatomical mechanics here, detailing exactly which fingers do the snapping.
Yeah, I read this. For a forehand kill, the explosive power is generated primarily by the index finger pushing violently forward against the grip. For a backhand kill, the kinetic power is generated by the thumb pressing forcefully against the flat, angled bevel of the racket handle.
It is laser-focused kinetic energy.
And during this violent finger snap, what is the rest of the arm doing? Is it swinging?
The arm is entirely rigidly static. The framework of the elbow and the shoulder is locked firmly in place.
So no shoulder movement at all?
None. The text uses the fly swatter analogy, which beautifully captures the mechanics. When you swat a fly resting on a table, you do not swing your entire arm from the shoulder.
Right. The movement would be too large and too slow, and the fly would easily escape.
Exactly. Instead, you hold your arm perfectly still, create a hinge at the wrist, and execute a tiny, vicious downward snap. That is the net kill. A violent squeeze of specific fingers, a microscopic downward flick of the wrist, and then, crucially, immediate braking.
Immediate braking to stop from hitting the net.
The instant the shuttle is struck, you freeze the wrist joint to ensure the racket head doesn't travel forward and touch the net. It is the purest expression of concentrated inch power.
Inch power. Generating lethal kinetic energy within a physical space of just a few inches.
It's incredible to watch in slow motion.
But what if the shuttle isn't sitting up perfectly high? What if the opponent plays a high-quality shot that drops slightly below the top of the net tape? You obviously can't snap downwards because you just drive the shuttle straight into the net cord.
Right. The geometry changes.
This is where the texts transition from the kill to the net wipe or the brush. How does that work?
The wipe is an entirely different mechanical beast, requiring immense tactile delicacy rather than explosive downward force. When the shuttle is dropping below the tape, the downward kill is geometrically impossible. You must manipulate the shuttle horizontally or diagonally to coax it over the cord.
But the arm is still static, right?
Yes, the structural foundation remains identical. The arm framework, the shoulder, and the elbow is completely frozen in place. But instead of a downward snap, the wrist and fingers engage in a delicate brushing motion.
How exactly does a brushing motion function on a cork shuttlecock?
Instead of striking the round cork of the shuttle head-on with a flat racket face, you are attempting to slice across the surface of the cork. The key lies entirely in the micro-manipulation of the fingers.
So the fingers are doing the work again.
As the racket face approaches the shuttle, the fingers actively twirl or roll the racket handle slightly. This microscopic rolling of the handle alters the angle of the racket face at the exact millisecond it makes contact.
Like putting spin on a ping pong ball.
Very similar. You aren't bludgeoning the shuttle, you are slicing it, aggressively brushing the synthetic strings across the surface of the cork.
And what does that horizontal slicing friction do to the shuttle's flight path?
It imparts extreme, erratic, tumbling spin. Because you violently brushed the side of the cork rather than hitting it cleanly, the shuttle loses its aerodynamic stability.
So it doesn't fly in a straight line anymore.
Not at all. It tumbles end over end unpredictably, rolling incredibly tight over the net tape and dropping rapidly into the diagonal corner. From the opponent's perspective, the shuttle looks like it's behaving erratically, completely defying a normal ballistic trajectory.
It's a highly offensive shot born entirely from the micro-manipulation of the fingertips, executed while the arm remains as stable as a stone pillar.
Exactly. It's touch and friction, not power.
That distinction is so elegant. The kill is a violent forward-squeezing snap. The wipe is a delicate horizontal twirling brush. But both techniques rely absolutely on the arm framework being rock-solid and stable.
Which is easier said than done.
Right. Which brings us to our final hurdle, and it is a massive psychological barrier. We just spent a significant amount of time discussing the need to freeze or lock the arm frame for the strike. But the source material throws a massive red flag here.
Oh, this is the trap that catches even advanced players.
It warns that the human brain inherently misinterprets the command lock as clench. If I tell myself to lock my arm to prepare for a shot, I immediately flex my bicep, I tense my tricep, and I rigidly lock my shoulder. I turn my arm into a statue.
Yes, you tense everything.
How does a player lock the structural frame without becoming a stiff, immovable iron rod?
This is the psychological crux of elite athletic performance, and the sources diagnose it flawlessly as antagonistic muscle contraction. It is a biological trap that ruins players.
Break that down for me. Antagonistic muscle contraction.
When your brain processes the word lock, it assumes your body needs to stabilize against a massive external blunt force. Consequently, it fires both your bicep, the muscle that pulls, and your tricep, the muscle that pushes, at the exact same time.
So they're fighting each other.
Exactly. These two muscles are antagonistic. They are designed to work in opposition. When they both fire simultaneously, your arm becomes rigid, stiff, and completely immobile.
And I imagine that extreme lock tension completely destroys that delicate inch power we just talked about.
It obliterates it entirely. You cannot execute an explosive finger snap if the muscles and tendons supplying blood and kinetic energy to your hand are choked with rigid tension.
You're stepping on the gas and the brake at the same time.
Perfectly said. Furthermore, that extreme muscular stiffness destroys proprioception, the delicate physical touch and spatial awareness required to execute a precise net wipe. You lose all sensitivity in your hand.
Because your nerves are just overwhelmed with tension.
Exactly. The text makes a profound distinction here. The physical goal at the net is structural support, not muscular tension. You need the bones of the skeleton to hold the posture, not the muscles.
So how do we consciously rewire the brain to achieve this state? The sources provide some phenomenal mental models for achieving true, explosive relaxation. The first one is the invisible bar table. Can you explain the mechanics of this visualization?
It's a brilliant psychological hack to trick the nervous system. Instead of constantly telling your brain to hold your arms up in the air, which demands continuous muscular effort, you visualize that you are resting your elbows on a solid, tall bar table that sits exactly at your chest level.
Wow, okay. I can literally feel the physiological difference when I simply imagine that scenario. If I think the words, hold my arms up, my shoulders instantly engage and tense up. If I think, rest my elbows on a table, my shoulders instantly drop, exhale, and relax.
Because when you visualize resting your physical weight on an external structure, your brain gives permission for the muscles in your neck, shoulders, and upper arms to disengage.
It says, okay, the table's got it, we can chill.
Right. Your bones and your skeletal structure are now theoretically holding the posture, perfectly supported by this imaginary table. The structural framework remains impeccably stable and forward-facing, but the muscles draped over that framework are completely relaxed, soft, and highly oxygenated.
That is so smart. And that leads directly into the second mental model provided in the text, the inflatable ball versus the iron rod. The text dictates that the arm muscles should feel inflated and springy. It uses the specific phrase, loose but not slack, full but not stiff. What does that actually feel like physically inside the arm?
Contrast the physical properties of a solid iron rod and a highly pressurized basketball. An iron rod is completely rigid. If you strike it, the kinetic energy vibrates jarringly through it, but it doesn't yield.
This is got dead weight.
But a fully inflated basketball possesses immense structural integrity. It holds its shape perfectly under pressure, yet its surface is fundamentally elastic. If you press into it, it yields slightly to absorb the force and then instantly springs back to its original shape.
So it's responsive.
Very responsive. Your forearm should mimic the properties of that basketball. It has defined form, it occupies space, it has physical presence, but it is not clamped down. It is primed with potential energy, ready to efficiently transfer force to the fingers rather than being frozen in a useless state of static tension.
And then there's the third analogy, which might be the most crucial cognitive reframing in the entire text. The water gun and the trigger. The text states that the forearm and the bicep are merely the plastic body of a water gun. Their only function is to point. The fingers are the trigger.
This analogy perfectly untangles the distinct roles of the arm versus the hand. Think about the mechanics of using a cheap plastic water pistol. You do not squeeze the plastic body of the gun to make the water shoot out.
No, obviously not. Squeezing the plastic body achieves absolutely nothing, except perhaps breaking the toy.
Exactly. The rigid body of the gun simply provides the directional aim. To actually fire the water, you only apply force to one highly specific, isolated component, the trigger mechanism.
So the arm is just aiming the racket face.
The arm from the shoulder joint all the way down to the wrist is merely the plastic casing. Its singular job is to point the racket frame accurately at the target. You shouldn't be squeezing, tensing, or flexing your forearm or bicep to hit the shuttle.
You lightly support the plastic casing on your imaginary bar table, you aim it using your visual projection HUD, and then at the precise millisecond of impact, your fingers, and only your fingers, violently snap the trigger.
This mental model completely localizes the force generation exactly where it belongs, leaving the rest of the limb relaxed, fluid, and ready for the next movement.
This represents such a radical shift in how we think about moving our bodies under pressure. To help cement this physical sensation, the text provides a literal physical exercise, a 30-second desk drill.
I love this drill. It proves the point instantly.
I want to walk the listener through this right now, because feeling the difference is vital. If you're listening to this and you're in a place where you can safely move your arms, try this experiment with us. First, we are going to intentionally do it the wrong way to feel the restriction.
Okay, let's do it.
Raise your right arm straight out in front of you. Push your elbow slightly forward, and now purposefully tense your entire arm. Clench your bicep tightly, flex your forearm muscles, and rigidly lock your shoulder. Turn your arm into that solid iron rod.
Notice how that tension instantly creeps up into your neck and traps.
Oh yeah, it feels awful. Now, while actively maintaining that intense full arm tension, try to wiggle your fingers as fast as you humanly can. Try to simulate that light and quick fly swatter snap we discussed.
What you will immediately notice is that your fingers feel incredibly sluggish. They feel heavy, almost as if you are trying to move them through thick molasses.
Mine are barely moving.
Because the antagonistic tension you've created in your forearm is literally acting as a biological brake on your finger tendons. The muscles are fighting each other.
Okay, stop wiggling. Now let's execute it the right way. Take a deep breath in. Now exhale forcefully, and as you exhale, purposefully drop your shoulder. Let go of all the muscular tension in your arm.
Let it all go.
Imagine your elbow is suspended softly by a loose spring from the ceiling, or comfortably resting on that invisible bar table. Your arm is still elevated, still pointing forward, maintaining the structure, but the muscles are entirely soft. The iron rod is gone. Now, from this deeply relaxed state, wiggle your fingers again. Try to snap them.
The biomechanical difference is night and day, isn't it?
It's crazy. Without that antagonistic tension choking the forearm muscles and tendons, the fingers feel like pure lightning. They can fire instantly, independently, and with incredible velocity.
That loose, frictionless, highly oxygenated state is the exact physical sensation you must cultivate when standing in the chaos of the T-zone. You must replace the mental command lock with the command set.
You consciously set the bone structure, you intentionally relax the heavy muscular machinery, and you prime the trigger. Replace lock with set. That is a profound mantra.
It changes everything.
We have covered an unbelievable amount of anatomical and spatial ground today. We started by mapping the geometry of the feet, discovering the mathematical physics of why standing too close to the net destroys your reaction window, and how shifting laterally seals the straight-line trajectory to buy your partner time.
We rebuilt the stance from the floor up.
We climbed up the body to dissect the altitude trap, proving structurally why the overhead Statue of Liberty pose leaves your chest vulnerable and drains your shoulders, and how adopting the golden height hand at chest, racket at eye, creates the ultimate posture of biological readiness.
A posture that actually protects you and prepares you.
We corrected the biomechanics of the elbows, abandoning the tense, flapping wings for the forward-facing shield to eliminate the kinetic jamming effect and utilize the windshield wiper defense.
Using the right muscles for the job.
We unlocked the brilliance of the projection hack, utilizing the out-of-focus shadow of our own racket as a built-in peripheral heads-up display to guarantee legal, mathematically aggressive positioning.
Taking the thinking out of the spacing.
We broke down the micromechanics of the strike, contrasting the violent, hollow-palmed finger snap of the kill with the delicate, twirling, erratic friction of the wipe.
Touch versus power.
And finally, we hacked the psychology of the human nervous system, using the water gun analogy to eradicate antagonistic muscle contraction and replace rigid stiffness with explosive, spring-loaded relaxation. To say that dominating the net isn't about wild backyard aggression is a massive understatement.
It truly is the thinking player's domain. The front court ruthlessly punishes blind panic and richly rewards calculation, spatial awareness, and structural integrity over raw, mindless power.
As we wrap up this intensely detailed deep dive into the source material, I want to leave you with a broader, perhaps philosophical application to ponder. courtesy of our experts' analysis. Think back to that core concept of antagonistic muscle contraction and the water gun analogy we just explored.
The physical tension we just spent an hour discussing on the badminton court is merely a localized physical manifestation of a much broader human reaction to stress.
How so?
I challenge you to consider how often we face high-pressure situations in our everyday lives, completely divorced from sports. It could be navigating a highly confrontational conversation with a colleague, facing down a seemingly impossible looming deadline at work, or simply trying to unravel a deeply complex, emotionally overwhelming task.
Real world, unavoidable pressure.
When faced with that psychological pressure, how often do we respond by unconsciously tensing our entire mental body? We clench our metaphorical shoulders. We adopt an emotional iron rod posture, rigidly and exhaustingly fighting against the stress with every fiber of our being.
We burn our internal energy reserves before the actual work even begins.
Exactly. What if, in our daily high-stakes lives, we learned to apply the strict physiological philosophy of the T-zone? What if we trained ourselves to just set rather than lock?
What would that look like?
What if we focused entirely on maintaining a stable, calm internal framework, consciously relaxing the heavy emotional machinery that drains our daily energy, and only applying our intense focus and effort to the precise, specific fingertips, the actual executable steps that pull the trigger on a real solution?
Stop squeezing the plastic casing of the problem and just lightly focus your energy on the trigger. That is incredible. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We invite you to keep experimenting with your own spatial geometry, your own structural frameworks, and the profound power of your own micro-movements, whether you're standing on the court or simply navigating the high-pressure complexities of your day. Keep exploring, keep analyzing, and remember that sometimes the absolute fastest way to react is simply to relax. Until next time.